So I'm going to do a simulation in Excel that simulates natural selection and predation. So there's two different genetic variations. Some rabbits just have an enhanced ability for speed, while others are slower. The fast rabbits will have a 60% chance of surviving compared to the slower rabbits. So we're going to use some random number generators, and basically if we get a 0, that individual is going to die. If we get a 1, the rabbit will live. If we get a 2, it will have enough resources to reproduce. To do this, it's pretty simple. We would just use the rand between function, and we need to use the lowest number of our range and the highest number of our range. So that's our number there. And if you double click, it will copy it down and fill out your spreadsheet. In this column, this will determine what genotype the individual has. So we're going to do rand between 0 and 1. If we get a 0, that individual has the slow allele. If we get a 1, that individual has the fast allele. I'll double click, and you'll notice that if you press F9 or if you do things in your spreadsheet, the numbers will change, and that's normal. That happens with random number generators. You can change settings so that they do not adjust, or you can just copy numbers and paste them. I also want to use some color coding, so you can use conditional formatting for this. So you would select the cells, and you can basically create a rule. So I'm going to say that if the cell contains the number 2, this will be green. I'll add another rule. If the cell is 1, just make it this orange color. And if it is 0, I will make it like a red color. Something that's not terrible to look at. Okay. And you'll see that it color codes our spreadsheet based off of this number. We'll do the same thing for this column. So if it is 1, I'll make it green. And if it is 0, I'll make it that color. Okay. So now we know which individuals are surviving and able to reproduce and which individuals are dying and what their genotypes are. This rabbit survives and can reproduce, and it has the slow phenotype, the fast phenotype. This individual here dies, and this individual had the fast genotype as well. Okay, so now I'm going to figure out which individuals will be preyed on by predators and which individuals will survive and reproduce. I'm going to use a function here, and this is an if function, so it allows you to make Excel give you a certain value or look up something based on the criteria that you give it, if it's true, basically. So we're going to say if this cell here, at cell F4, is greater than 0, so meaning they survived, then look up their genotype here, and we want to look up the speed genotype and have it just actually read out what the genotype is. These $ here make sure that Excel locks it in this particular table and doesn't move down the spreadsheet as you're working. And the number 2 is representing the column number. So this is the table. We want to read column 2. And if it is less than 1, basically, if it's 0, then we're going to leave it blank. So this is just interpreting this genotype. 0 means slow, so it's recognizing that, but it's only recording the information for the survivors instead of those who already died. We don't need their information anymore. Now we're going to determine which individuals are preyed on by predators. I'm going to use another if formula here, and we're going to similarly say that if this individual survived, so greater than 0, we want to use one of these random numbers in our probability table. So it's going to randomly pick a number between 1 and 10, and based on which number it is, it will determine if the individual died or survived. We're going to leave it blank for the individuals that already died. So I'll copy that down, and we can see that a random number was generated for these surviving individuals, and this will help us determine which of these survivors were preyed upon. Okay, next we are going to determine the actual outcome for these individuals, so those with the slow alleles and those with the fast alleles, what happened to them. So for this function, we are going to have if H4, so if the gene is slow, then we want to look up the predation value that we randomly generated here and look that up in our table, and we want it to tell us the outcome. So that's what VLOOKUP functions are used for. They look up the information in a table and tell you what the criteria you're looking for, what that means. So we want it to read column 2, and 0 refers to an exact match and not an approximate match. So we want it to use the exact number and not try to use something in between any numbers and approximate the value. And then we will leave everything else that doesn't fit. So the fast genotypes, we'll leave that blank. So these 2 quotations allow us to do that. And we can see our results here. So I already used conditional formatting here, and we can see out of the individuals with the slow genotype, which ones survived and which ones died. So yeah. There's a function called COUNTIF, which will count all of the cells in Excel that meet the criteria that you're looking for. COUNTIFs will count like multiple criteria, basically. So we want to count those who got a 2 here, so those who reproduced, and of the individuals who reproduced, those who survived that had the slow allele. So we're going to use the slow outcome column here. So they have to have a 2 and they have to have survived here. So I'll press enter. And we will do the same thing in the next column. So those who got a 2 here and the fast alleles that survived. Okay, so I added a couple more things here. So I added this chart and I basically counted in the original population how many died, lived, and were able to reproduce. So you can use a COUNTIF function, and I'm counting this whole range here, and which individuals had a 0 were counted as dead. So Excel counted how many rabbits had died. And I did the same thing, but used 1 here and then 2, and just summed up all of these survivors in the original population before predators started to affect the population. And then I also did a similar thing just to count how many with the slow genotype survived, and then how many with the fast genotype survived, and then how many reproduced as well. So if there was a 1 there, that was counted as the individual reproducing. And I also calculated how many died for both of those genotypes. And I put this information, I just copied it here and made a chart so we can visually see. But you can see here that the rabbits that had the slow genotype did not reproduce as much either as those that had the fast genotype.